Another football season of great enthusiasm is upon us, so I go to the former football player that I believe has the most profound amount of indifference about the upcoming NFL season. Ricky Williams is somebody that I don't believe will be watching on Sunday. Do I have this wrong? Am I incorrect when I say that Ricky has to be told by others that the football season is beginning and might not get immediately to a television?
That's not fair. I'm not saying in most years that might be somewhat accurate, but it's not fair. Actually, I will be watching football this Sunday. I'll be in Tempe, Arizona, hosting a Heisman House at the High Lounge. So I will be smoking and watching football. And maybe this was the issue. Maybe if I was allowed to smoke, then I'd be watching more football. But I am allowed to smoke, and I'm bringing people together to come watch Sunday Ticket. So I will be watching football this Sunday.
First, I'll be in Tempe on Sunday, so just shoot me the address. But second, Ricky, I do want to know, had you been able to smoke during your career, if there was no marijuana restrictions or rules or even laws in the land, do you think your football career would have lasted longer? Would you have been happier, or do you think it was always just meant to be for you to be the way you are?
Yeah, I think the answer to that question is yes, yes, and yes. So maybe one of them is maybe. I don't know if I would have played longer. I might have gotten to the point of what am I doing a little bit sooner, but I definitely would have enjoyed playing a lot more. Because one, cannabis helps us enjoy things in general, but two, the amount of stress I had to deal with the drug test and being afraid of people find out. And I think that just drained a lot of energy I could have been using to be a better football player.
Can you explain to us the amount of stress that you were under in general? Not just there, but what do you regard as the greatest forms of stress in being a star football player?
Injuries. It's not even close. Injuries. Well, the coaches say you're either hurt or you're injured. You're either hurt or you're injured, and you got to figure that out. And that's stressful, especially for me, because I always want to be on the field and I don't ever want to let anyone down. So even when my arm was dangling off, or my ankle was broken, I went back in the game until I realized, okay, something is not right. So that in the game is kind of stressful, but during the week of practice, when you're trying to figure out how much can I practice, when you're in a lot of pain, and then always thinking, how's this going to feel on Sunday? How am I going to do? Just the cumulative effect of being hurt for long periods of time in the NFL, I think, is by far the most stressful thing.
Explain to me the stress of the drug test.
Well, I guess for someone who's not smoking anymore, it's probably not that stressful. It's probably not that stressful. But, for me, it was a gamble. It got to the point where I realized I can't play football if I'm not consuming something. And so, I would experiment. So the experimental times were the most stressful, where I was trying to see how many hits can I take and still pass a drug test tomorrow. Okay? 3 is the answer, at least the one as far as I got in my examination. So the stress was when I smoked and I wasn't sure if my urine was clean enough, and that if I failed, it'd be the end of my fame and my career. So that was kind of stressful. The other part of the stress is when you're in the NFL drug program, or at least back then, and I love to travel. Every time I travel, I have to give the NFL my address, how long I'm going to be there, what time I'm going to be there. And if they call me at any time, I have 4 hours to pee in a cup or it's a failed drug test. So that was kind of stressful too.
Can you take us through the number of times you were being tested once you end up in the program, and how silly all that seems now in retrospect when you're only watching football on Sunday as a paid appearance on behalf of your marijuana brand?
I know. It's kind of cool. So when I first got into the drug program, for the first 2 years of the drug program, and because I was in there from 2002 to 2011, so I spent about 8 years in the drug program. And when I first started off, it was 9 times a month, which is almost every other day, almost. But at the end of the day, it came down to the drug tester. The first guy was a rule follower, and when they follow the rules, you got to pull your pants down to your knees and you got to be there at a certain time. It's just stressful. Second guy, Jen, he was cool as hell. He just would come in the house, hang out with the kids, and say, "Just give me a cup." Oh my God!
Did you ever give him the wrong? Not your urine.
Did I? Hey, I said Chris today. would you mind peeing in a cup for me? And then she would just put it in the bathroom. I'd go in the bathroom, turn the water on, and I'll get the cup and bring it out. I only did that a couple of times. Most of the time, I either knew how to follow the rules enough or I knew how to clean my urine. Most of the time at the NFL's drug program wasn't enough because, out of the 500 or however many tests I took, I did fail, I think, 4.
I love the idea that the drug test is saying, Ricky, I got some good news and I got some bad news. The bad news is you failed your drug test. The good news is you're pregnant.
Yeah, that's the thing. We've got you as the wrong gender. Can you?
I had some PTSD from FedEx trucks, because in the NFL drug program, if you fail a test every time, 7 days later, you get a FedEx in the mail. Mm-hmm. And I think the worst one was in the end of 2005. So I was suspended for 2004, came back 2005, served a 4-game suspension. This is when Nick Saban was coaching the Dolphins. And then I tore it up, last 2 games of the season, average over 150 yards or something like that. And I was like, fine, Canadians going well. USC was playing Texas for the national championship game. I was so excited to go to the game. That morning, I get a FedEx at my friend's house. Damn NFL, man. I get a FedEx at my friend's house telling me that I failed a test, so I'm going to be suspended for a year. So it was kind of hard to enjoy the Texas national championship game, but I still was able to enjoy.
Did you ever fail a test for not getting there within 4 hours?
No. Mm-mm.
So you were able, no matter where you were able to get to where you needed to be in order to do the test. What are some of the creative ways that you tried to clean your urine?
It's not that creative. There was the first part that worked. The first way that worked the best was there's a drink, and it was called like extra clean. Okay, and it was tricky in the beginning. It was tricky in the beginning because I didn't want the Dolphins to know that I was in the drug program, because once everyone knew, then it was easy. I just would do the test at the facility. But before I wanted people to know, the tester would come to my house in the morning before practice. So he'd get there at like 6 a.m. So in order for me to take the extra clean, I had to get up at 5 a.m, take the drinking, and then wait 15 minutes, drink 2 more glasses of water. And then my urine was clean for 5 hours. And so the major test that I failed, my second failed test, is we had just lost to the Eagles on Monday night. And I was probably out a little bit too late. And I woke up at 5. I took the drink. And as I was waiting to take the second drink, I fell asleep. And then I woke up with the drug tester at my door. And if I was smart, he was cool. I would have just said, can we do this later? I was giving myself time for the drink to work. But for some reason, I just rolled the dice and said, okay, I'll pee in the cup. All right. Here's the other part of the story. So I peed in the cup, failed the drug test, right? And when you pee in the cup, you pee in an A bottle and a B bottle, right? And they say that you pee in the B bottle, so if you fail the A bottle, they can test the B bottle to see if it's valid. So again, I fell asleep. I didn't finish the process. I failed the test. And so I appealed the test. And when I appealed the test, they tested the B bottle, okay? The A bottle failed the test. The B bottle did not fail the test. So I was this close to passing the test, okay? So I appealed it, and the NFL came back and said, we don't want to suspend you. If you just stay in the drug program for 8 more months and you stay clean, we'll let you free. But we're not going to count this as a suspension. All right. So they kind of left it open. And I said, no. I said, I want to be out of this right now. And so they kept dragging it on, and that's when I failed the final drug test that led to the retirement.
I read a story that made me think of you this week. I don't know if you know this or not. Troy Aikman revealed that he almost unretired in 2003 to play for the Dolphins, that Dave Wannstedt and Norv Turner. Oh, you're learning this for the first time? You did not know this?
I had no idea. Wow.
I guess he didn't talk to Ricky before.
Do you realize how different that might have played out if it wasn't Jay Fiedler and A.J. Feely as the quarterbacks?
Oh, man. That would have been great. I might still be playing football.
Mike Ryan, you're not convinced that a concussed Troy Aikman could have been better than Jay Fiedler?
I mean, if you look at the stats, Troy Aikman, slightly overrated, but I mean, I understand I'm comparing Jay Fiedler, and it's not like he's from this other time and it's a bygone era, but Troy Aikman, was a little overrated just because of all the success he had on the field, no?
Regardless, yes, he only had one 20-touchdown season. But again, Jay Fiedler and A.J. Feely helped Ricky retire.
I mean, when you put it that way,
Yeah,
when you're just saying the names.
He was
Jay
carrying the
Fiedler,
ball
A.J.
400
Feely.
times a season. It was yes or no, what the Dolphins did to you was cruel and inhumane.
Only because they weren't willing to pay me. That's what makes it cruel and inhumane.
Are you emotionally tied to Texas, Alabama this weekend? Texas remains the program that you care about the most, right? If something is going to stir some embers of passion for football in you, it's Texas, correct?
I feel like I'm supposed to say yes.
No, if I have it wrong,
That's the best answer.
do I have it wrong?
I mean, I feel like that's the answer. I feel like I'm supposed to say yes, but I don't feel a yes like rushing to the surface. I like Texas, and I think when they play and I'm watching the game, but I think I try to avoid being a fan for this reason. They break my heart every single year, and so it's hard. It's hard.
It hurts too much. A notoriously
It hurts too much.
a man with a very high pain threshold is here to tell you that Texas football hurts too much.
Well, it's been 15 years, 14 years or something. It's like, that's a lot. And I'm an optimist. And so I was, thinking about the beginning of the football season, every year since Pop Warner, I was convinced that we were going undefeated. Convinced. And that first loss, it didn't matter. That first loss was always heartbreaking. Always. And then I think, okay, we're going to lose one game. So every loss is like heartbreaking because I think we're going to be undefeated.
Good seeing
So
you
it's
again.
even worse when I'm not playing. It's like other people that I'm not coaching and playing, and I just have to watch. Oh, that's hard for me.
As I was saying, good seeing you again, buddy. Always good seeing you.
Yeah, you too.
I am loath to admit this, but I have missed this man. I have missed the stat of the day. He's been very busy fighting for the right things, fighting in Hollywood. He is a freedom fighter.
I mean, let's go already. What's taking so long?
Yeah, let's. We need our
Thought this would be
content. What
wrapped
is
up by now.
what is taking so long? What you're not allowed to talk about the strike still, right? Or what can you say publicly? Anything?
Well, I mean, I can talk about it generally. I can't talk about the actual negotiations such as they are. But, yeah, what's taking so long is that the companies that we're trying to negotiate with are a little bit in disarray, I would say. They're having a hard time getting on the same page. You saw yesterday that Warner Brothers Discovery announced they're going to lose between $300 and $500 million because of the strikes. And the total amount of money we're asking from that company specifically is about $40 million. So when you're throwing away $500 million to save $40 million, there's a disconnect somewhere. And we are trying to, I think they are trying to figure out how to proceed. But it's beyond the point of being rational. I think it's now a question of whether these 8 or so companies that are fierce competitors with each other can actually get on the same page and be rational in terms of how they make a deal with us. So I don't know. It's a little bit like ask them. Go ask them. Go ask Disney what they're doing. Ask Warner Brothers. Ask Apple and Amazon and Netflix. And because at this point, they're the ones who have to sort of figure out what the path forward is, I'd say.
What happens first? You guys agree to a deal, or the Blazers finally come back and say Tyler Hero is fine?
That's a good question. When's the NBA trade deadline?
February.
Yeah, we'll make a deal first. I can almost guarantee that we will make a deal before Damian Lillard puts on a Heat uniform.
What can you tell us is the most fascinating thing? Because you really are in the trenches, in the thicket on this thing. And you've got a good governor for things that are interesting. So I imagine this is perpetually stimulating as well as stressful.
Yeah, it is. Stressful is, it's stressful to have people out of work, not only us, but all the people who work on all of the shows and movies in town. That's a very stressful thing. It's been 130 days or so now. Like, it's not, we are deep into this. The last strike in 2007 lasted 100 days. There's only been, I think, 1 or 2 others that lasted longer than this one has already lasted. So we feel that. We feel that stress. We knew we were going to feel that. It's not a surprise, but this is the first time that we have had in this negotiation between the unions and the companies a bunch of new faces, right? Netflix, Amazon, and Apple were not around in 2007 when we did this the last time, and it's hard not to tie some of the difficulties that we've had negotiating with them to that simple fact that they didn't exist. Like, they're new. They've never been through this before. They have a different business model that upended Hollywood. And, I'm not blaming them necessarily, but I think it's not a coincidence that in a period of time when whole entirely new companies showed up and started doing things in a new way, that when you get down to the nitty gritty of how people get paid to make this stuff, they have a different view of it. So I think that's the biggest kind of puzzle that we're trying to solve here.
Unfortunately, you're not allowed to talk about it, so that stinks.
So,
by the way, I wore this shirt for Stugotz, and he's not here.
no.
Can everybody see this?
Grateful Dead?
A Grateful Dead Red Sox shirt.
Wow.
Yeah.
That might
That's
be the
cute.
whitest shirt ever.
Yeah.
My friend Matt, who is indeed white, got this for me at a Dead and Company show,
Is it Matt Damon?
and I'm. I've never seen the Grateful Dead or Dead and Company, but I thought it would make Stugotz happy. And shocker, he's not here.
Is it Matt Damon, though?
No, what are you talking about?
You should know Stugotz isn't on the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz, Mike Schur.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
your
it's
bad.
right. It's my bad. It's my bad for not figuring that out.
Matthew Modine?
Are you surprised?
Yes, it's Matthew Modine. Good job.
Are you surprised when you hear the thing floated out there, the theory floated out there that Apple is going to buy Disney?
Am I surprised at that?
Yes.
I mean, I'm not. The rumors are. There have been so many rumors about consolidation in the last couple of years, and these companies are just scrambling to get bigger and bigger and bigger and buy more, compete. Like, that's what's funny to me is that let's say there's any truth at all to that rumor, right? Apple might buy Disney. Apple and Disney are two different companies that we are negotiating with at the same time who are purporting to be on the same side. So, like, they're like linking arms and teaming up and negotiating with unions, and at the same time secretly planning to like eat each other for lunch. Like, that's what I mean when I say that I don't think it's a coincidence that these new companies have showed up from a different business entirely, from computers or retail sales or just streaming in general. And they're like, they hate each other. These companies hate each other. They're in direct competition and they want to destroy each other. But for the purposes of collective bargaining, they link arms and they act like they're friends. So it's just a very difficult situation. And unfortunately, the results of that difficulty are that a bunch of people are out of work for a very long time. So I just hope that, I don't know, I hope that they're in a room somewhere putting their heads together, calling a temporary truce, promising not to eat each other for lunch, and then moving on.
Mike, two questions. Question one, assuming labor peace happens here soon, do you feel like this is going to be a long-lasting one, or are you guys going to go through this again at the end of the collective bargaining agreement? And then second question, was it Matt LeBlanc?
Well, to answer your first question, I would say that the way that this has gone traditionally in this town is that every 9 or 12 years, there's some kind of little flare-up of a problem, a structural problem that needs to be fixed. That's not just arguing over dollars and cents, but actually, like, really getting in there and changing something structural about the system. That, generally speaking, has led to a decade of labor peace. I'm not saying that's going to happen now, but I think if we can fix the problem, then there's a decent chance that we will have a decade or so of relative peace. To answer your second question, yes, it was also Matt LeBlanc. It was Matthew Modine and Matt LeBlanc who gave me this
Did
shirt.
you have any kind of reaction to Bill Maher, who has become an angry, bitter old person shouting at young people? Basically, it seemed to me, going against the writers who keep his show on the air, or at least sounding like he didn't think this was as easy as it's being made out to be, which is this is a lot of greedy people who are trying to cement mixer labor.
Yeah. Bill Maher, who I don't know, and I'll say this diplomatically, has a penchant for speaking very confidently about things he does not understand in the slightest. So it doesn't surprise me when he says things like that, because that's his move. His move is he rolls out of bed, he slumps into his studio, a topic gets thrown out, and he speaks with extreme confidence, like overwhelming, just rich white dude confidence about what's going on in that particular arena of the world. And never, ever, Bill Maher has never once in his life gone like, yeah, I really know a lot about that. Let me read up on it. Like he's never said that. He's never said like, hey, can you do me a favor and help educate me about this particular subject? He just talks straightforwardly about the truth of the matter as he sees it, regardless of how ill-informed he is. So yeah, that did not surprise me at all.
Well, he's got a lot of segments in his his show that he has to fill. So maybe sometimes he just runs out of, topics to talk about and decides to just say what's on his mind without having the time to fully Google it. Like, if it were like the Marlins or something that he's not paying that much attention to.
Yeah, he should just do crossword puzzles.
Yeah, actually, I think we'd all be better off if he just did crossword puzzles.
Matt LeBlanc was actually an answer for 13 across.
Let's do the stat of the day, please.
Damn it!
Start of the day, it is your start of the day. Start of the day, it is your start of the day. Start of the day, it is your start of the day. Start of the day, it is your start of the day.
First of all, Roy, thank you for turning on original sound so I can hear the music.
You got it.
Your major league leader in strikeouts this year as a hitter is Eugenio Suarez, one of Mike Ryan's favorite players. Eugenio Suarez. He has struck out 182 times in 139 games. Tony Gwynn struck out 188 times in the 1990s.
10 years?
10 full seasons.
To be fair, one of those was strike shortened, so it's like 9.5. I see what you're doing there.
Good point.
It would have been at least 189 times if this season had been struck. There's another crazy stat. I'm in a real Tony Gwynn rabbit hole these days. My friend Justin pointed that out to me. This was an article on MLB.com. He faced 18 Hall of Fame pitchers in his career, a total of 541 plate appearances, which is basically a full season of hitting against just Hall of Famers. And in those 541 plate appearances, he hit 331. Guy was incredible.
Bieber?
Was the friend Justin Long?
Oh, you blew it.
She said Bieber, and I laughed.
He's talking too much on too many networks, too many programs.
That was my fault.
It was Thoreau, right?
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me whether you think your
Timberlake?
Tony Gwynn stats
Trudeau!
are better than yesterday's Tony Gwynn stat, which is that Pete Rose could come out of retirement right now at 82, go 750 for his next 750, and still have a lower batting average than Tony Gwynn?
That's pretty good. You want to hear my favorite one?
Yes.
Mike, get ready to say the word nice. Tony Gwynn came to the plate 69 times with runners on second and third.
Nice.
And 2 outs, and never struck out once. Not one time.
That's actually nice.
Did he ever strike out in that scenario? It's incredible. He faced Greg Maddux 107 times and hit 415 against him. He was ridiculous.
Good seeing you again. Good to have you back. We're going to wear you out next week, sir.
Sounds good. Bye, everyone.
Die. We're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. The oceans are all burning and we're all wondering why. Let's turn on the news. and find out how we're gonna die. Die. We're all gonna die.
I have in front of me a horrifying climate fact of the day. There's about a 50% chance that this will be the hottest year ever recorded, but scientists now say that there's a far greater chance of that record being set in 2024. Over the next 5 years, there is a 98% chance that one of those years, the next 5 years, will be the hottest ever. 98% chance. It's 107 degrees in Dallas today. And as one professor told NBC Miami, quote, "I don't know a single city that is truly prepared for the worst case scenario that some climate scientists fear."
We're all gonna die. We're all gonna die.
But I'm not sure that that climate fact is worse than, are there presently 2 Category 5 hurricanes in both the Atlantic and the Pacific?
There's actually 3. There's 1 in Coral Gables.
Not yet, Mike. Not yet. You can't do that after beating Miami of Ohio, although
Well, they talked a lot of crap.
the Miami of Ohio coach afterwards said they'd been physically manhandled, that their players were beaten up, that they were sore. The University of Miami in Coral Gables has gotten physically stronger. They've got stronger, more muscular players.
I am at least 1 win away from being able to talk shit, so I'm not going to do that here. Have you guys seen the trailer for this new CW show called The Swarm?
No.
Wait,
Why would you?
isn't it?
The
It's the
CW is a
CW.
thing that exists, kind of. And if you name a show that's on the CW, chances are you'd name a show that happened 10 years ago.
Riverdale?
The Flash.
ACC football's on the CW now.
Supernatural.
ACC Network has, well, the ACC has games showing up on the CW, which is interesting. But there's a show called The Swarm, and the entire idea behind it is that someone has weaponized the oceans against us.
I believe
So
it.
it's not just with tides, but orcas are coming for your boats. It's almost like it's ripped from the headlines. Now, it has a CW budget, but I saw a trailer for it, and I was like, I can get in on this concept overall.
Isn't there a show on Amazon called Swarm?
This one's The Swarm.
Yeah, it's a difference.
totally
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Speaking of movies and entertainment, there was a scandal that has rocked the Rotten Tomatoes world. Evidently, in Hollywood, I did not know this, although it makes sense, a PR firm for about 5 years now has been paying critics for positive reviews. I rely, I would say, pretty heavily on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't just do trailers. I don't think I rely on anything more heavily when choosing a movie, if I'm just scanning, than Rotten Tomatoes. And now I've come to find out that this is totally contaminated, corrupt. This is a surprising scandal to me, although it probably shouldn't be.
Same note, too, by the way. I, too, rely on Rotten Tomatoes a lot for very opposite reasons, because I'm looking for movies that are poorly rated on Rotten Tomatoes for the podcast Cinephobe. By the way, Harlem Nights episode dropped today.
Foul.
Thank you, Roy. But Dan, like, here's the thing. There's layers to this, right? There's the most obvious layer of why Rotten Tomatoes is broken, which is in order for something to be qualified as fresh, you only need a 3 out of 5 stars or 60% approval by each critic. So meaning you could have a movie that is 100% certified fresh, but all the critics thought it was okay, 3 out of 5. Versus a movie where many of the critics thought it was excellent, and some of them didn't really like it, and that might get to 88%. So that's just the obvious flaw. But when you dig a little deeper into what they're talking about, there is movies would come out and would get like that early score wouldn't be so great, and so PR companies would go and literally compensate reviewers without like explicitly saying, hey, write something nice. They'd say, hey, our movie isn't really getting a lot of great reviews, and we just think it needs to be exposed to more critics, so we'd love it if you could review. Also, hey, we'll even pay you for your time. And the idea here is that, wink, wink, if you play nice, you will be on our list of people we always turn to whenever we need reviews for our movies. And so they had all these movies that were inflated, one of which, or what I gathered was, it would happen at movies that were in film festivals that hadn't been picked up for distribution yet. So you pay critics to review it nice at the festival. It has a great Rotten Tomatoes score. Distributors ante up the cash. The movie gets made.
I have nothing on this other than I'm horrified that we've all been lied to. I go to it all the time, too. And I assume that something was up, usually whenever a DC movie gets positive reviews.
Yeah.
What The Flash was
The
one
Flash got me.
The
I
Flash
ended up
was one of
liking
those
The Flash,
movies.
but-
The Flash and also Ant-Man Quantumania, where they released the reviews to a certain select amount of people who they knew were going to give positive reviews, held it, and then from there the popularity took over.
I read the other day that The Flash lost more money than anything ever done in the 100-year history of Warner Brothers.
And think about what surrounded that film. All the controversy. And I almost kind of appreciate that someone felt so passionate about art that they were willing to navigate all of Ezra Miller's BS and what was eventually a huge loss leader for Warner Brothers to be like, we have to release this movie. We have to. I will put my name to this. People have to see Michael Keaton in the cape and cowl one more time.
The babies flying out of the window. We have to see it.
Controversial take. I finally saw it on Max. It wasn't so bad.
It was a decent nostalgia
It was
trip.
decent. It was okay. It wasn't the worst offering by DC.
What about the babies?
The bar is so low.
But hold on, it's better than any Marvel movie over the last year, other than Guardians.
I agree, just because it's not all purple. Although the CGI is just as bad. But here's the thing: people don't ask for much; just a little bit of nostalgia and a little bit of heart.
Hort.
The Rotten Tomatoes thing does like speak to a kind of. I don't use Rotten Tomatoes as Bible when I'm trying to decide what movie to watch. If it's like on the border, I'm not going to be like, well, Rotten Tomatoes says fresh, so it's definitely going to be good and I'm going to love it. But like people do consider it when they're trying to pick a movie to watch or whatever. And it always seemed like something that was like semi-crowdsourced, that wasn't like something that a snobby critic for a major newspaper outlet was writing that you'd be like, oh, what is that guy talking about? Like, this movie was fun to watch, right? Like, it was always like, felt like it spoke to most moviegoers at their level, which is like, you want to watch movies usually just to like have fun, have a laugh, like see something good. And the fact that it can be manipulated by the powers in play that are making millions of dollars off these films, like it sucks. It's like one less thing to trust about the internet and where we get a lot of our information.
But it's so easily gamed. That was the thing. It's like it's not sophisticated at all. So that makes it prime for manipulation and for influence and all that. But the reality is, I know like we rail on the snobby critics, but at least back in the day, you actually had to see why someone
Anyone can
didn't
be a
like
critic.
it. Yeah, but like, Jeffrey Lyons, Siskel and Ebert, like they actually had to tell you why they thought the movie sucked. And there are great examples. Like Siskel and Ebert both gave 2 thumbs down to Ace Ventura, right? But they had to tell you why they didn't like it. And they would always have like later episodes where they would go back on ones they got wrong and explain. Here, people aren't even reading the reviews. They're just looking at the score. And as I pointed out, even without the manipulation, the idea that if everyone said 3 out of 5 and it was all right, that can be a 98%.
I think it's something that an audience sees and they're like, well, like we all take it with a grain of salt though. And now it's like, okay, now we have to take this with a giant pillar of salt because none of this actually matters or means anything.
Whatever happened to word of mouth?
Put it on the poll, Juju. Whatever happened to word of mouth, yes or no? Go ahead and Google, by the way, young people. I don't know if Lucy and Jessica know the work or the physical nature of what represents the movie critic to me. Gene Shalit.
Oh, come on.
Thank you. Thank you. No, thank you. I want to.
Dan, Siskel and Ebert is always in the crosswords, okay?
You have to physically look at what Gene Shalit looks like.
Look at Lucy's face.
He actually looks like a shallot.